we run, and I also help with peer work, like we do social groups and games nights, and I help with that sort of stuff as well.
Hi, Matthew, that was absolutely brilliant. Sorry about that. We just had a little issue with the mic there, but it is resolved. Could you just please tell me that again, bud? My apologies there, mate. So as you were saying,
that's all right. Where do you want us to?
Yeah, just
do it all again, or?
Yeah, if that's all right. I'm sorry about that, bud.
That's fine. So my name is Matthew, and I work for Autism in Mind. I've been with Autism in Mind about 6 years, but around about 3 years ago, I became an employee of Autism in Mind. What I do is help facilitate a course that we run, which is for autistic people, and it helps them raise awareness about themselves. And I also facilitate like peer groups, like social groups, and game sites that we run for people.
Perfect. And Carole, would you like to introduce yourself, if that's okay?
Yeah, I'm Carole, and Matthew drew the short straw to get to work with his mother because I'm bossy and interfering, and I feel sorry for him. Matthew started being involved in the world of autism from being 3-year-old when he was diagnosed. His claim to fame is climbing up a Christmas tree in the House of Commons. We were down there to deliver 6,500 signatures looking for greater awareness, understanding and resources for autistic people. So he's been involved from a very young age. We were up and down to London for quite a few years. We've been an organisation for 20 years this year.
Wow.
We didn't expect to be spending it in semi-lockdown, I've got to say. Hopefully by December we'll not be in lockdown, fingers and toes crossed. And we were commissioned by Sunderland Clinical Commissioning Group 5 years ago now to provide a service for autistic adults who do not have an associated learning disability. And it's not that we're discriminating, but we're not equipped to deal with people with learning disability. That's not our area of expertise. And autistic people who don't have a learning disability have never ever had a service before. And even now we're quite innovative in as much as we're one of possibly a handful of services all over the UK. So I've been doing this 20 years,
Wow.
you can tell. And it took us 15 years before we were commissioned, and now we're commissioned by South Tyneside as well. So we're into coexisting localities.
Brilliant. That's awesome. So, awesome. So could I ask, how did you get started then? You said you started 20 years ago. How did you get started, and what was like the inspiration behind that? Like, to kind of, to start
because
things up?
Matthew and his brother, David, were diagnosed as being autistic in the year 2000, and within 6 weeks of each other, even though there's 10 years between them, so within 6 weeks of each other, they both had a diagnosis of autism, and I kind of went looking for support, and there wasn't any. So I've never been one to kind of sit on my laurels. I start to look around, make inquiries, and then we opened Autism in Mind in the December of the year 2000. And we've been quite instrumental in a lot of things in Sunderland. We were part of the first local authority autism group.
Wow.
And from that, the Autism Outreach Team, which is now an award-winning team in Sunderland, were born to life from that. And literally, I'm just like that annoying song that gets stuck in your head, and I don't go away. So I've sat at meetings for multiple years in Sunderland and down in London, just banging a drum, saying that autistic people need services. They need people to understand they're not broken, they don't need fixing. Autism is a way of being, but it's not something that's wrong with you. It's not a deficit. In fact, a lot of autistic people, most of them have got many different strengths that the rest of us could do with, actually having.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that it's great that you were raising awareness about that. And yeah, I think that's absolutely awesome. So you said that you guys have been commissioned for 5 years. How was that kind of change from you from, 15 years of kind of, campaigning and raising awareness, and then to kind of finally get that, commissioned after 5 years? How was that for you guys? That must have been amazing, right? For you to finally...
It was massive. It means I've had to put a zip on my mouth. I've had to tone my act down a lot because I was very outspoken.
Sure.
And that doesn't go down well. And so, and anyway, I'm not in charge of the company. Letitia Smith, our managing director, is.
Cool.
And Letitia's a fully qualified counsellor by profession. And so I'm part of a team. There's 8 of us at the moment. It's a small team, but we work really well as a team and really hard as a team. But the changeover from voluntary to commissioned was huge. And I had no idea how many doors it opened and how much more people listened once you're a commissioned service. But that's good. I mean, it was good for autism.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think that's absolutely awesome. And I think that it's really cool to see here, because I think that we have some of your guys in the chat here, which is absolutely brilliant, because I'm seeing some new names and some new faces there. So very happy to see that, guys. We've got Malcolm who says hello, folks, and everyone's saying hello. And then we've got Laurie as well, who said she didn't know most of the history. That's really interesting. And she says that. And then we've got Matthew as well from Sunderland People First, who's saying it's good to see you guys on today. Sue, one of our learners, she says that her friend has 4 sons, all with autism, and she says they're all amazing lads. So that's great as well, obviously, to kind of see people who obviously are going to know what you're talking about as well, which is absolutely brilliant. So yeah, it's all good stuff. So I wanted to ask you guys, what kind of stuff have you been up to during lockdown? Because I think that everybody, it's affected kind of differently.
It has.
And some organizations, have really, really struggled, but some organizations, it's maybe been a little bit easier for, and I guess it's kind of affected different people differently. So how's it affected you guys, and have you guys been able to kind of do much while it's been going on? Or
Matthew, do you want to?
Do you want me to start the games nights and stuff?
Well, how has it affected you? How has it affected us as a company? We all work individually now, apart from me and him, and he's stuck with us whether he likes it or not. So how has it affected you?
How's lockdown affected me in regards to work? It's definitely been a challenge, like having to adapt how you work during lockdown, because we're used to working with people face to face, and when you take that away, it brings quite a lot of challenges in.
Definitely.
Because when you don't have that in-person contact, it changes the dynamic of how you communicate with people. So I've had to try to get around that to make sure that we can still support people like we were before lockdown.
Definitely.
And it's a bit of a challenge for us, because it's just doesn't really feel right. Not being able to see someone face to face when you're speaking to them.
Yeah.
But I certainly think that we've been able to adapt to the challenge, and I think we've done a good job.
Brilliant.
We've been doing some infographics, actually, which I'm not putting up till tomorrow.
Sure.
But Matthew, you can read that one out, because that's what you've done. Not just you, but Beth, that works for us, and Matthew facilitate the games nights. And so how many games nights have you done during lockdown?
We've done 28 games nights, with totaling 80 hours.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely awesome. So I'm guessing that like a lot of providers, you guys have kind of been switching or trying to switch a lot of your services to online. Is that right? You're trying to interact with your learners and online as much as possible.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
On the 20th of December, we kind of knew this was coming. So Isabel, who works for us, half of our workforce is autistic, which is amazing. And Isabel is amazing. And literally between the Friday and the Monday when we were due to be locked down, Isabel and Letitia, between them, transferred everything to a virtual existence.
Wow.
So we went being from physical and being there in AIM House and in the Autism Hub in South Tyneside to being online. And because we're commissioned by 2 different local authorities, we have 2 sets of groups for everybody. So we've got a Sunderland, what we call our Connect Support Prevent group, because that's what we did down at AIM House. Every week we had a Connect Support Prevent session where people come just to connect or for support and basically prevent crisis, isolation, loneliness, whatever you want to call it. So that transferred online, and we didn't know at that point whether it was going to work, but it's worked. So I mean, the stats we're going to come out tomorrow. We've had about 3,600 posts in that time, 12,800 engagements, and that's just on the Sunderland group. And when we add South Tyneside to that, it's been massive. It's been amazing. It's been hard work. It's much harder working from home.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and not actually having the physical kind of one-to-one contact or in a group, it's harder.
So can I just ask, what kind of methods have you guys been doing? Have you been contacting people on WhatsApp? Have you been doing Zoom calls, or have you guys, been doing telephone calls? How have you guys been kind of staying in touch with some of your service users?
We made about 750 telephone calls.
Wow.
We've sent over 1,000 texts.
That's amazing.
200 emails. We've got messages through Facebook. Autistic people need a platform that's right for them. They need a communication style that's right for them. This one's not really that. Autistic people don't really like this kind of platform. Not everybody, but a lot of autistic people don't. So Matthew bought the equipment himself to set up games night.
Brilliant.
And it's delivered from my sitting room where we are now. So every Monday and Thursday evening, they've got, am I allowed to say the server? Discord server?
Yeah, it's a Discord server.
It's a Discord server. And people drop in and out of the games night and they play many and varied games. And we're looking at, although this is nobody knows this, but we're looking at doing one of those room things.
Cool.
The CSI rooms.
The escape room.
The escape room in the near future.
Wow, that's
to try and keep it up to date. So Matthew's looking to do that shortly. So that runs from our sitting room twice a week. We're live on Facebook every day between 3 and 5.
Brilliant.
But now I would say we're live all the time, more or less.
It's just a continuous.
It's continuous.
Awesome.
The CCG asked us to do a Keeping People Connected project, where we contacted or attempted to contact every autistic person over 18 in Sunderland.
Wow.
And I think we've contacted about 555.
That's amazing.
At the moment, and then we've got 57 of them now on our group.
That's so cool,
which is brilliant. It has. It's blew my mind in certain ways at the possibilities of it. So we do telephone calls, texts, messages on Facebook, emails, groups, and Matthew and Beth do the games night.
I think that's so cool, guys, and I think our chat is absolutely buzzing today. We've got some really cool responses here. So we've got Charlotte, who was saying that it's nice to see people raising awareness for autism, and she says that she thinks that autism people are not broken or anything. She says that they're just thinking in a different way than the average person, which I think is great. And Sue's just agreeing to that. And then we have Malcolm, who's just saying that autistic people merely think in a different way and they see details that others miss, which I think is really cool as well. So, and we also have some of the people first in the chat there saying that great to see Carole and Matthew sharing. What an amazing job Autism in Mind are doing. What a team! ! So that's
Well, we've been working with Sunderland people first with the Keeping People Connected project, and so that's been cool because we've worked with them quite a few times before, and we know each other really well, which is good.
That's awesome.
So it's been really good to work with them.
Yeah,
virtually.
I think that's awesome, and I'm that's kind of obviously part of one of the things that I love about these streams is it's kind of being able to kind of get us all together. I think it makes the community stronger when we're all kind of being able to help each other. So I think that when you've got a kind of strong community, it's great to kind of be connected to some of the other organizations like that. So I think that's absolutely awesome. So Matthew, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the some of the games that you've been doing. So how did you get that idea, and then how did you kind of set the wheels in motion for that? What was the thing that really ignited that for you?
Well, before lockdown, we ran a game site weekly anyway down at House.
Okay.
We'd get people down to House and we'd put a projector on in the in our sitting room, and we'd play games on the Nintendo Switch. We'd play Smash Bros, Mario Kart, and Jackbox, which is a phone party game.
Cool.
I thought it started getting me thinking, with lockdown, how is there a way I could get this online? And then I thought, with Discord, you can stream.
Sure.
You can stream on that. So I bought a computer because I didn't have a computer to stream with. Sure. And then I got a Switch and a capture card, and I hooked it up to the computer. It was a bit of a pain to get it working, but eventually I got it working, and now we can stream on Discord, and then people can come on, they can talk to each other, they can join the stream, they can join and play Jackbox. It kind of keeps games nights we're doing up and running and continuing.
That's
which I
absolutely.
think it's really important, like during lockdown, to keep in contact with people and have something to do.
I think that's so true. And some people first were asking about if you have any tips from Matthew about how to engage with Ames Animal Crossing sessions. So I guess Animal Crossing is one of the games that you do as well.
Oh yes, we we do. Like do you know what Animal Crossing is?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you can kind of just give it a brief explanation, I guess, for the people who are watching
Yeah.
who maybe don't know what it is.
So Animal Crossing is a game where you have an island, and on that island you've got to build like a village, and you can make like these really cool villages, and you can customize them how you want. And what you can do is you can visit other people's islands. People can visit your island. So what we did is we've done it twice now. We get people on the Discord group, and we get people visiting each other's islands and just having a look at what each of us built. So it's just like another thing to do.
It's an island tour.
Yeah, an island tour.
Without actually leaving, we stay at home and have this island tour. And one of our guys actually built an Autism in Mind signpost on his island.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
And
Really?
it was brilliant. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah,
that's so cool. So it's so good that you guys are kind of able to kind of create that community even on a game. So I think that's so cool, and that you guys are kind of able to communicate. And especially like a game like Animal Crossing, I play a slightly similar game called Stardew Valley. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
I really love that game, and it's quite similar to Animal Crossing. It's basically like a farming simulator, and you kind of harvest these crops, and you can make your house bigger, and you can get a barn and stuff like that. And I really love that game. But one of the things that I enjoy so much about that game is that for me, it's just kind of so peaceful, for lack of a better word. Like there's nothing too challenging. There's nothing that, because sometimes I love playing video games myself, and sometimes I'll play a game and I'll get quite stressed if I can't beat a certain level. But the thing is, with something like Stardew Valley, there's no levels. It's just like a gradual progression from day to night. And I think that Animal Crossing is quite similar in that respect. Like it's like a nice kind of tranquil kind of game. Do you get my meaning by that?
Yeah, I can relate to that because I played those types of games sometimes as well. Just because I have the games that stress me out, and I have the games that I like that and relax.
I think it's for Autism in Mind. Animal Crossing has been the lockdown game, and it's helped a lot of people. It's helped a lot of people to chill out and reduce anxieties. The lockdown it's hard for everybody. Autistic people don't always cope with change very well, and we literally turned on a sixpence overnight. We went from being, the society that we were into a very different mode that a lot of people had not experienced before. A lot of people worried about the virus, and that created anxieties about going out. And we just felt it was absolutely essential to have somewhere to go where you could, talk if you were worried about it. But we also like throw in quizzes, and the teacher, our managing director, today has put up how to draw a duck. Apparently that's a thing at the minute. I didn't even know that.
I wouldn't know where to start. So
we've got people drawing ducks. We've had all sorts of things. It's keeping it relevant, keeping it fresh. That's difficult. We're kind of, because we've been 102 days, is it? 102 or 3 days now.
Yeah,
it's a long time.
It is a long
and we're not
time.
done with yet. I mean, we're kind of semi-locked down, unlocked or whatever tomorrow. But
yeah, it's a good unlocked, I guess. I never thought about it like that, but yeah. So last just closing thought that I got there on video games as well is just that I think that it's you guys as well are potentially bringing video games to people who've maybe never thought to play it or they've never played it before, and I think that it can be very useful in terms of like a tool of like kind of mindfulness, but not just that. But I think that also it's like something that just to kind of more than anything take people's mind off lockdown and stuff like that. And I feel like integrating it's great because a lot of people think that video games are maybe just something like Call of Duty or something like that, and they have no interest. But to introduce them to things like Animal Crossing, I think is great because it can really be a good kind of little escape for people, but also a nice kind of thing where they can monitor progression. They could go like fishing and these kind of things, which are like quite relaxing to do in the game actually. So I think that it's great that you guys can kind of introduce people that and say, hey, listen, like we've got a video game where you can still connect with us, and it's also it's going to help you to be able to kind of communicate with us, but it's also going to help you to be able to kind of relax, and also maybe it's a good form of escapism for you as well. So I think that's awesome.
That's definitely happened. We had people which, when we did the first Animal Crossing stream and the island tours, some people didn't have the game, were just watching, and because they watched it and seen what it was, they bought it themselves. So that's definitely happened.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And it's, I mean, the best part for me of AM House was the social evenings, because it's great to hear people having a great time and having a laugh and a carry on, and now that's in my living room. So, like, I'm kind of doubly blessed because we didn't have to stop that. It's not the same. There's some games that they can't play, and I do get that. But at least it's continued, and that's really, I think, been important for a lot of the gamers that came to our actual physical meetups.
We're going to need a bigger building because we've gained we've gained a lot of new people from this as well that are going to want to come to our games nights when they restart. So, and we were already quite full when we're doing them, so we're definitely going to need a bigger room.
We're going to need a bigger building. Yeah, we're in a house, and it is a house. So there's a sitting room, a kitchen, and upstairs that was bedrooms and now offices and a quiet room. But it doesn't lend itself to 117 people on the group at the moment. Wow. That's just the Sunderland group. And then we've got about another 50 on South Tyneside. So, yeah, it's quite big.
That's absolutely awesome. So, obviously, I know you guys mentioned about maybe having escape rooms for the future. I guess I know that right now things are pretty much uncertain with the coronavirus. And as you said, things are starting to get unlocked. But do you have any kind of future plans then in terms of stuff like what you guys can do when some of the restrictions have been eased, or how you guys are going to do that? Or is that just something that's maybe a little bit out of the way for now? So yeah,
it's kind of we've spoke about it a lot, Letitia and I, and I mean we want to go back. It's just really difficult at the moment, and so we're looking at September provisionally to start and do some of our things. I mean, we were halfway through a Me, Myself and Autism course. Well, I was running one in South Tyneside. Matthew was running one in Sunderland, and we were kind of 2 to 3 sessions away from completion of this course, and it's been on hold now since March the 23rd, which is not great.
Yeah, that's tough.
So we need to find a way to complete that for the people who are actually on that course, and then start again. We've got a massive waiting list to start again, and it takes a cycle of 12 weeks to complete, because it's a 10-week course, but you've got the lead into it and the lead out of it, and it's so important. And I mean, our mantra at Autism in Mind is nothing about us without us. So nothing we do is actually designed, produced or delivered without autistic people being included.
Brilliant.
And I think that's kind of our unique selling point.
I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
And so we have some of the people first in the chat that saying, just you got to give credit to AIM for the amazing low-level preventative support that they provide. Carole is barely off the phone, so that's across to you, Carole.
I can definitely confirm that.
Yes, I can. Yeah, he hears me droning on through the walls. Yeah.
So yeah, I just want to kind of ask you guys. So what kind of so let's just say, for example, kind of pre-lockdown, what kind of stuff would you get up to in a general day? We know that you guys have that you're kind of contacting people who have autism and kind of let them know that you guys are there to support them. And you guys spoke a little bit about the games night, which I think are absolutely awesome. Do you guys do like sessions? Because we mentioned a session just before. So what kind of sessions do you do, and is there different types, or is just could you tell us a little bit more about that, if possible, please?
Well, I'm going to let Matthew talk about Me, Myself and Autism, because he facilitates that course. I do brilliant. As well. But I'd rather you got his point of view from it, awesome, and how it's, as he thinks, it helps autistic people.
Fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
So as I've just been talking about, we run Me, Myself and Autism. It's a 10-week course, and what that's designed to do basically is to help autistic people learn about themselves. And we're not telling people what they're like, what they are. It's more of a self-discovery thing, and we cover a lot of topics over them 10 weeks. Each week is a different topic. There's a lot of information to take in, but by the end of those 10 weeks, what we hope is that people have learned something about themselves that they didn't realize, and then they can learn coping strategies to help with anything that might be problematic. So like we have a course around sensory issues. We have 2 weeks actually of sensory issues, because they're quite big for autistic people. And we look at what sensory issues people have. We get them to discover what sensory issues they have, and then we show them some possible like coping strategies they can do to help with those, because sensory issues can be quite a block. in daily life. If you've got sensitive hearing or sensitive smell, sensitive eyes, then just going to the bridges might be really, really stressful.
Yeah.
But there are things you can do to help that. And we've seen that once people learn those sort of things, sometimes, like, not every person learns something, but we do get a lot of people that do actually learn something that helps them. It's just nice to see that. So that's what the course is basically. We cover a lot of topics. We cover thinking, anxiety, executive functioning, which is how you manage your day-to-day life. That's quite important, and often people don't realize that autism impacts on your executive functioning, but it does. And once you learn about that, it opens up a lot of like light bulbs in your head, because autistic people can often have problems with like organizational skills,
Right.
timekeeping, stuff like that. It's just all this information that once you learn it, like it helps your autism make sense to you, because before this course existed, what happened is you just told you're autistic and then you're left on your way basically.
Yeah, and that's amazing, Matthew, because it makes me think, like, how crazy is it that that there wasn't this service never existed before? Like, how crazy is it that people, that was just the MO, people would just, you get told you have autism and then that's it. To me, that's so crazy to think that there wouldn't be something in place. So thank goodness that there is you guys that, like, to be able to offer what you do, because it's such an essential service. Yeah, so I think that sounds amazing. Obviously, you spoke about quite a bit there, but I think that all sounds absolutely great, and I feel like it must be such a help to some of those people who have autism, and then, as you said, they never really got like, that was it. That they didn't tell them any of the kind of, as you were saying, like sensory issues or anything like that. So I can only imagine how useful and helpful it must be to the people who attend the course.
It's kind of, it's not trying to change. We don't try to change people, because we wouldn't want to do that. It's allowing people to understand their autism and realize it's okay to be autistic and feel comfortable in your skin. And it's a lot of the strategies can help. A lot of the sensory regulation techniques that we deliver can help as well. And they're not all costing a fortune. It's things you can do in your daily life. It's understanding that it's the other stresses in your life that can impact on how you're feeling on that day. And that anxiety, we name it to tame it, because autism and anxiety go hand in hand together. And sometimes just knowing what makes you anxious, because you can think. I mean, we had a guy who was amazing, and he was coming from South Tyneside at the time through to Sunderland, and he had huge problems changing buses. And he kind of said, like, getting off the bus and waiting for the next bus made him ill. So Letitia said to him, that's your changing bus anxiety. So the next week he got off the bus and he said, I was standing there thinking, this is your changing bus anxiety. And when the bus comes, you'll be great. And when he got down to house, he was so chilled about it. And that might seem like nothing, but it was a big issue for him, because that meant now he knows, when I change a bus, I'm going to feel a bit horrible, but then it's going to pass. And it's sometimes it's life-changing. A lot of autistic people have gone through their lives being told, you don't want to do it like that, you need to do it like this. Schools in particular are set up for what we call neurotypical children. Autistic kids are kind of forced into a system that doesn't fit them, often without very little support. And I'm guilty as charged. I kind of understood, to the best of my ability, what my son's autism was, but I didn't think to impart my wisdom, really, or my knowledge onto them. And it was as I went through knocking on doors saying, we need a service, we need a service. And I'm like looking for somebody to pass this baton to. And then I thought, actually, the people you should be passing it to are your boys, because they're the ones that's living with it. So self-awareness is crucial in everybody, not just us.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that I've spoke to, kind of, when we had Lisa on. We spoke to kind of experts by experience, and I think that that's so cool. So I think that someone like Matthew, when he's doing that course, when he's speaking to a learner, but you'll know yourself, like, when they tell you something, you'll be able to, like, relate directly to it, because it may have been something that you've experienced yourself. So you can say, listen, like, I know how you feel. I've felt like that before, and I feel like for some of your learners to be able to hear that, it's going to be such a relief for them, because it's not going to fall on deaf ears, because they're not saying something to someone who wouldn't understand. Obviously, Matthew, you may have experienced some of the things yourself, so you'll be able to tell them like directly, like, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it really helps people. It really helps like validate their struggles and their problems. It might not even be me that would it might not even be me that identifies with what they say. It might be somebody else in the room. One of the things that is really good about the course is we would run it with about 6 to 8 people at a time, and in the first few weeks, everyone's like normally anxious with each other. But as it gets in, what you start to see is normally that people start to support each other as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, and that's amazing as well, to kind of foster that, or like kind of nurture that kind of peer support. I think is something that's essential, and it's something that we try. Like in our sessions, we have like drop-in sessions, and that's something that, you know, it's important for me as well, is to kind of there's the learning, and well, for the drop-ins, they're a little bit more loose. We don't follow like a particular like kind of curriculum or scheme of work for the drop-ins. It's generally kind of what people want to do, but I'll help them with whatever their project is. But it's also equally as important to me, along with the learning, to be able to kind of offer that peer support, and like to have group discussions as well, and just kind of talk about stuff with them. And you know, I think it makes the learners much more engaged when they're in a, you know, that kind of a creative environment. So, you know, in a session, we'll do obviously a lot of learning. We'll help them with video project or with a photo that they want to edit, but at the same time, we'll talk about films sometimes, because that kind of discussion, it helps everyone kind of loosen up, and creates a better environment, you know.
And I think during myself and Autism, we encourage people to create their own personal profile, so that they fully understand and have got a written account of what their autism means to them. And it does change. Autism changes. It's not static. It moves around depending on what's going on in your life, the stresses and everything. So there'll be periods of life where your autism doesn't impact as much, but there'll be other times when it does. But having that personal profile also helps us to help the person in situations like benefit assessments, benefit reassessments, applying for jobs, going into the workplace. Because when you go into a workplace, then you are entitled to ask for reasonable adjustments.
Yeah.
But if you don't know what those adjustments should be, if you don't know yourself what you need, then you could go in there and ask. I mean, we went into one company to train them, and there'd been a huge amount of changes had been put in place in the building, and they might have been great for 101 autistic people, but not actually the employee that they were supposed to be for. So yeah. So it's kind of educating people to understand that everybody who's autistic is different. Of course, we're all different. And for the autistic person themselves to know how their autism impacts on them.
I think that's a really brilliant response there, Carole. I just wanted to mention that some of the people first just asked about Sutherland's community choir, and if you have any plans, Carole, to lead the next project.
And that'll be Andy, and tell him no, I don't. Howard, that works for us, who's done the infographics, and he's amazing. He's a huge find. Howard also does this community choir,
right?
And I just happen to mention that I loved choirs. So you see now, Andy's got me leading it. No, I'm not.
Okay, awesome.
They pay me in here not to sing, don't you?
I was wondering, guys, if you guys have any kind of like links as well with some of the people first were asking, just to any of the kind of training you provide. So even if you guys have any links to any of your social medias, we can just post in the chat there, and we can put them in the description of the video afterwards, just so we can kind of redirect anyone who's watching who it might be of interest to, just kind of to you guys.
The social media groups are they are secret, they're hidden. Okay. It's okay. By invitation. Well, people request to join, and we like to know everybody that joins our groups. But if anybody goes to our website, which is www.autisminmind, all one word, .com.
Fantastic.
Then they will find a way to get in touch with us from there, and then we can point them in the direction of our groups.
We do also have a public Facebook page just called
Yes.
Autism in Mind Sunderland.
Yeah, that's
You can
right.
find us on there as well.
Okay, yeah. So brilliant. So yeah, we've got autisminmind.com and then Facebook, Autism in Mind Sunderland as well.
And Autism in Mind, South Tyneside. We've got 2 pages there.
Okay, brilliant. And awesome. That's absolutely fantastic. So I put those in the chat there in case anybody wants to check those out, because obviously I think that you guys are doing fantastic work, and there might be some people watching who you know, the service could be of value to. So I think that it's definitely worth checking out, guys, there. So that's absolutely fantastic. But yeah, I think you guys are doing some really, really cool stuff at the moment, actually. So what was it gonna? Yeah, so I wanted to ask as well, what's it been like working in Sunderland and South Tyneside? How do you kind of find that, you know, working here? And do you guys plan to kind of branch out to other parts in the future? I know that obviously it's kind of one step at a time, but yeah, how has it been working in the Northeast? And would there ever be plans to kind of move out past that, beyond the Northeast in the future? Or?
It's taken time to establish. It takes time to establish in a new area, doesn't it? Wouldn't you say?
It does.
Because we've had a lot of time to establish ourselves in Sunderland, and going somewhere new, we've found that not being as established or known, it's going to take us a little longer to like get to where we are in Sunderland, South Tyneside, I think.
But we're lucky because Malcolm, who's watching, or at least he was, Malcolm works for us.
Yep.
In South Tyneside, and Malcolm knows everybody.
He's been great help.
Yeah, and he's amazing. So we get loads and loads of points in the right direction from Malcolm, because he knows the area really well. We would love to be everywhere, and that's not because, I mean, we did this for 15 years as volunteers, so it's got nothing to do with finance. I mean, obviously it helps. It's nice to be paid for it, and I won't lie. However, you know, if we had to, we'd do it all again tomorrow in a voluntary capacity. But we just feel so strongly that autistic people need a service that meets their needs. And we're not perfect by any means, you know, and I get that. There should be a menu of choice, and at the moment we're it, whether people like it or not. That's what they get. But I do think there is a need for this in other areas. I think low-level preventative support is very much undervalued, and the value of knowing that you can just go somewhere for something that to somebody else might not seem big, but sometimes to you personally, you know, we hopefully one day we'll get to train an autism team up in Sunderland. The plans were there, but now everything's on hold. Yeah, and we work closely with like the crisis team, the community mental health teams, benefits. I mean, we were supposed to be doing some training for the DWP as we went into lockdown, and we were supposed to be doing some training through for CNTW, because we trained quite a few of their hospitals, and it's just it doesn't matter who makes a difference. It just matters that the difference is made. In Sunderland, we are almost twice the national average for autistic people. So the national prevalence rate is said to be 1%, and we're knocking on the door of 2% in Sunderland.
Wow,
That's a lot of autistic people. And in schools, autistic children, especially if they are not in a specialist setting, if they're in mainstream, they're quite isolated. Not a lot of schools actually encourage them to mix with their autistic peers. And I don't know why that is, but it's been a bugbear of mine for quite some time, because a lot of kids spend a lifetime at school being isolated and not realising that there's probably another 50 kids in the school that's autistic just like them. And I think that would help them not to feel as isolated.
I totally agree, and I didn't realise that it was 2% in Sunderland. So I think that's absolutely an amazing point. And just to go back to what you said about the kind of the financial incentive, I think it's obviously the fact that you guys worked for 15 whole years before getting commissioned. I think that's testament to the fact that it's that the finance, it's not a totally like financially driven, obviously, because that is a long amount of time to kind of raising awareness and activism. So yeah, I think that's so true. But yeah, I think that it's absolutely amazing, and I think that you're totally right as well. Just to go back to what me and Matthew just talking about just before as well, the fact that like this is not something that's automatically in place for people is kind of a wild thought to me. the idea that someone could, because as we were saying, that someone could just feel so alone, not being, and some of it could be from the fact, from things that they're not maybe aware of. They're not aware of kind of maybe what sensory kind of triggers or issues they have, or they're not aware. As you said, it goes hand in hand with anxiety, and they're not aware of what's causing the anxiety. So I think that having something like the sessions that you do, letting people kind of understand that a bit better, it's fantastic.
It's very important. It should start at school. It needs to start in school. We shouldn't be picking up autistic adults in their 20s, 30s. Sorry, I'm going to cough.
Okay.
It's my asthma. And even up to their 70s, that have gone through their whole life not knowing about their autism and not knowing what it... I mean, it's like know your normal. To every individual on this planet, our normal is unique to us. So you've got a lot of autistic kids at school wondering why other kids are not feeling the way they do and looking the way they do, because to them that's their normal. And we need to celebrate diversity.
Definitely.
And make sure that people feel welcomed. And I'm not saying schools don't try hard, because they do. But autism is a very, very complex. I say it's a mastermind black chair subject, and it takes a long time to learn. And we haven't stopped learning. I mean, what I thought I knew about autism 20 years ago isn't what I think I know now. And some of the best people to inform our practice are the autistic people that come on our courses. We've learned so much from them. So, we've got a gratitude to all of them, because they've taught us a heck of a lot about autism.
Yeah, and I think that what you just said, I know you mentioned about Malcolm watching just before. He said something very good, I thought, in the chat, which I want to kind of draw back to that, because you mentioning, over 20 years, what you've known has changed. He said that one of the problems with autism is that many years ago, people were diagnosed as being mentally ill, bipolar, or having schizophrenia, and that is why there's a misconception that there's an autism epidemic. So he was saying that there's no epidemic, but a greater understanding, and he's saying that's what we aim to do at AIM. So I think that obviously kind of the lack of knowledge maybe about it over 20 years ago, I think that's what he's talking about there. So that is something that's worth pointing out, is kind of
it's right. And Malcolm will not mind me sharing that he was 52 when he was diagnosed.
Wow. Yeah.
And that followed a diagnosis of a family member, and that was when he kind of realized that he was on the spectrum himself. And I mean, Malcolm is a mental health sister by profession, so he knows an awful lot about mental health. And we get people coming to us on a regular basis who've had all the diagnoses that Malcolm's just put on the chat there. So we've, especially ladies, come to us who've either been diagnosed with bipolar or unstable personality disorder, and it isn't, it's always been autism. So a lot of people have picked up a lot of labels that are not the right ones. Autism isn't a label, to be a signpost to support somebody throughout their life. And that's what we aim. That's what we call aim. That's what we aim to do. And I don't think you can do that for somebody unless you've got autistic people working for you. And that's at the core of what we do. It's,
definitely.
If we grow, if we do go into other areas, then it will always be that we have autistic employees with us.
Just like Some People First. So Some People First always include people with disabilities in what they do. That's something that both of our organisations value very much, and it works, because when you can hear firsthand from people, like you help them, then it really helps.
Yeah, and I love that as well. And we were talking, just about how someone who has experience that obviously has a good understanding of it, and I think that for me is fantastic as well. Yeah, and so I just wanted to call back. I think that you speaking about Malcolm there, and we were talking about kind of misdiagnoses. Well, we've got Laurie in the chat who was saying that she didn't get diagnosed until she was 23, and instead she got a lot of mental health labels, learning difficulties, etc. And she's saying it was like a bomb going off in her life, just into to being autistic. Laurie also said that Autism in Mind has helped her so much with a lot of her anxiety, and that it's helped her so much during lockdown with her health anxiety as well. So
That's Laurie's lovely, and we have a lot of people who've had a lot of anxiety during lockdown, and health anxiety, obviously, because we've been told for months now that we've got this virus in our communities that can impact. So it was always going to be massive. It's big for everybody, not minimising it, but autistic people are super anxious all of the time. So I think it's been harder for them. So we were as determined as we possibly could be to make sure that we had a space for autistic people to come together. And I mean, we're still, on top of all of this, we've got on with our day jobs because we're still doing PIP forms, we're still helping with employment support allowance. It's made it harder, it's added a layer to it, but we deal with Gen 2 and we're dealing with still the community mental health teams. So we're still doing all the other things that we were doing pre-lockdown, but we can't have a physical meet-up. And I know a lot of people actually, even if it's just a cup of tea, cup of coffee, and a laugh, a lot of people miss that. We miss that, don't we?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully, obviously we'll follow the guidelines as long as necessary, but hopefully we can get back to that before too long. I just wanted to say, very briefly, just on health anxiety, that is it can be an awful thing, obviously, kind of, because I think that with anxiety, one of the that was we're talking just because we're on the topic of misdiagnoses, and people would say like many years ago that would be hypochondria or something like that, and I think that that's so bad because to kind of dismiss someone with anxiety and say, oh, they're a hypochondriac, it's the worst possible thing you could ever do, because anyone who has anxiety or has suffered from anxiety can know that the feeling of anxiety can simulate symptoms. So if you are anxious about something and you think you have a headache, you will have a headache. If you're anxious and you feel like you've got chest pains, you will have chest pains. It's one of the awful things about anxiety. So health anxiety is awful, and it's a very scary thing as well. So
and autistic people have got everybody has interoception. It's your internal sensory system, but for some autistic people, it's very finely tuned. So a lot of autistic people can feel absolutely everything that's going on inside of their body all of the time. So if you can imagine that heightened with anxiety, because it does impact with your emotions. So then if you're feeling, that something's not right, and it's often very poorly understood by medical professionals. So if somebody goes into the doctors and says, I've got a pain just there, and it's there in my kidney, and the doctor laughs and says, how do you know that? Well, actually, probably autistic people are telling you exactly where the pain is, because that's where they can feel it. So there's a lot of what we call diagnostic overshadowing goes on, and it's often just put down to the autism. Well, you can have as many conditions in tow, and there are a lot of conditions that are in kind of hand in hand with autism. So it's not always the autism. Anxiety is really hard. It's not even part of the diagnostic criteria. It should be, in my personal opinion, but at the moment it's not. But it's something, it's omnipresent. There's a quite a famous autistic lady that said, her name's Sarah Hendricks, that autistic people wake up anxious for no apparent reason. So you're starting the day with your anxiety level on a 2 or a 3, and it just takes, something simple, like the phone rings and you're not expecting it, somebody knocks at the door and you're not expecting it, and your anxiety's up to 7 or 8.
Yeah, and anxiety is something that can be really awful, that kind of feeling like, and it could happen different ways, but feeling like you're on edge or anything like that. And obviously there's many different formations of anxiety. So it's not pleasant at all. So I think that we have, so Matthew said something great. He said that he did an earlier prototype version of Me, Myself and Autism a few years back, and he says it's changed and improved since then, but it helped me a lot with understanding certain things. And he says that recognizing what kind of support helps him, he wouldn't have known any of that if it wasn't for being on the course there.
He did the first one. Yeah, he did the first one. It used to be called All About Me, and Matthew did the same one. And we still use some of his quotes about being driving your own car, and not being the passenger in your own life, because that is what a lot of autistic people feel like, the passengers in their own life. Nobody gives them the steering wheel. So I think that's what the course is equipped to do.
I think that's a beautiful analogy. About kind of being the behind the driving seat in your own car. I think that sounds that sounds great, and I think it paints quite a kind of a good picture as well to kind of represent what he's feeling, I guess, or how it actually is, the reality of it. So some of the people first are just saying there that they said that this was a much needed conversation, and Autism in Mind have really been shining a light for autistic people during lockdown. And he says the concern going forward for people with a learning disability and autism is the next steps. And he was saying that, and then Malcolm after that said that all autistic people are anxious. The degree of anxiety, not just health anxiety, can be overwhelming, overthinking, and this is a difficult word, but I'll try my best.
Catastrophizing.
You got it. Catastrophizing. Our comment. It is the symptom rather than the cause syndrome. So yeah, that's a really good point as well by Malcolm there. So thanks for that.
Yeah, he's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, we are kind of winding down to the conversation. Got a couple more questions, but we are approaching the end. We've got about 8 more minutes, give or take. So yeah, I wanted to ask you guys, do you guys have any general lockdown advice at all? I know that we're kind of coming out of it now, and over this next couple of weeks, it's going to be easing off a bit, but anything that you guys just in general have been doing that's helped you?
No. Do what's right for you. Don't do what just because we're unlocked tomorrow doesn't mean you've got to go out tomorrow. Doesn't mean you've got to go to the pub tomorrow. Doesn't mean you've got to stand in a queue tomorrow. But it doesn't mean you've got to stay in the house if you'd want to do that. I know that sounds contradictory, but everybody will approach this differently. We've had a conversation on the group today about how odd it's feeling in places like the galleries and the bridges because they've been so empty and now they're starting to fill up again. And we'd had 4 months just about of places being empty. So people have got to do what feels right for them and don't care about what anybody else thinks. If it's right for you, do it. If it's not, if you want to stay in the house, stay in the house. That's absolutely fine. But if you want to go out, then that's also fine.
Brilliant. Have you got anything to add to that at all, Michael? Matthew.
I get Michael quite a lot. It's quite a strange one.
My brain just automatically just said those words, and then as it was coming out my mouth, I was like, "That's so." Yeah, sorry, Matthew.
It's fine. Yeah, exactly what Carole's saying. I would say don't feel guilty about going out. The government said you can go to the pubs now. You can go to restaurants. I wouldn't feel guilty about doing that if you want to do that. If you want to get out and do everything that the government said you can do, go and do it. But then again, if you're the complete opposite and you feel like you're not ready for that, don't feel guilty about that. To do whatever you want to do. If you want to take your time, readjusting back to normal life, then take your time. If you want to get out there straight away and do what the government's saying you can do, go and do that. Just don't put too much pressure on yourself, really. Just take your own time.
Stay safe. It's, the government guidance is still stay alert.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly certain what that means. I've never been certain what it means, alert to what, but, alert to the fact that they're telling us there's still a virus out there.
Definitely. That's good advice.
Yeah. Although the good news in Sunderland is that we're really low now in the rankings. So unlike some of the reports in the press suggested that we were heading towards lockdown again, Sunderland actually issued a statement to say that couldn't be further from the truth.
Oh, wow, brilliant.
We haven't had a confirmed case in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and wow. We're doing well. So fingers and toes crossed that it stays like that.
Definitely.
Stay alert, still follow social distancing, but try not to worry too much.
Yeah.
Good advice, guys. So yeah, guys, we are going to go in a couple of minutes. Just want to say to the chat, if there's anyone who has any questions for Autism in Mind just before we go, please get them in. Also, guys, do you guys have anything else that you'd like to add at all, or are you guys happy with that? Because
just to say a massive great big thank you to the CCG for putting their money where my mouth was 5 years ago and continuing to do so. Because somebody actually needed to take a chance and to actually help us to build something that was specifically for autistic people. And we're very fortunate to have the support of our commissioner in Sunderland and South Tyneside. They've both been amazing. So we're very lucky. And again, not even for financial reasons, but for the actual autism community, we need a service like ours to be there.
Brilliant. Is there anything you'd like to add at all, Matthew, or are you happy with that?
I'm happy with that, yeah. Thank you for listening, basically, to the CCG, because we've been banging on doors for years and years, but it's took somebody to listen, and that's what they've done.
Yeah.
And I was starting to see change.
Brilliant. Yeah. And so yeah, just in closing in the chat, Matthew said that he was nearly named Michael, and he says he gets called it a lot as well.
Yeah.
So he can relate there. And he also asks, have you got any spare copies of Animal Crossing with a smiley face emoji? So
He doesn't even play it, mine Matthew. No.
I've got too many other games.
Yeah. Too many other
He
games.
just facilitates it. He doesn't play it.
Yeah, so I think that just in the rest of the chat there, everyone's just really grateful. Charlotte says, thanks for the live stream today. It's been very interesting, and she's been educated a little bit more on autism, so that's fantastic. Good to see that. And Matthew as well says, seriously, thank you for today so much. It's really helpful to him. So that's great. So
it was nice to know that we weren't just talking to ourselves. Thank you. I talk underwater. I told you that, so you know.
It's good that it makes for a good stream. Okay, guys, so if that is it, I think that we are going to go. I'm going to put the advice screens up just for a couple of minutes with a few helplines there, just in case any of you guys need them. We'll have that on for about 2 or 3 minutes while we go. But otherwise, guys, if that is it, then I think that we are going to take our leave.
Head into the weekend.
Yeah, we're going to head into the weekend.
It's been very good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
Lovely.
Thank you,
Speak
everybody,
soon.
for watching. And goodbye, guys.